Hello everybody, how's it going today? Glowplsama231 here, back in today to talk about Oshi, chapter number 135. This chapter is titled By Her Side. And I have to say, recently in Oshi, there have been a lot of chapter titles. I mean, in total, we've had about 135 of them. But to be honest, this is one of my more favorite chapter titles because at first you really don't understand the point of it, right? And by the end of the chapter, you're like, okay, the point of this title actually makes a lot of sense in context of the chapter. And to be honest, a lot of our recent Oshi chapter titles just haven't really had that effect, in my opinion. I mean, I'm gonna actually should have thought about this beforehand, but I decided to go off on this tangent as soon as I started the episode. But let's pull up the most recently Oshi chapters. Let's see, or as far as I can see, the last three off of Manga Dex, we have Acting, chapter number 133. This entire series, every chapter could just be called Acting Part 1, Acting Part 2, Acting Part 133. And to be honest, the series wouldn't have changed that much. And in number 34, Depths. Okay, sure, this series could be called Depths Chapter 1, Depths Chapter 2, Depths Chapter 134, and nothing would change. But By Her Side, I have to say, that's a pretty good chapter title right there. But to get into it, what this chapter title means, this is a very good chapter of Oshi, in my opinion. I've seen a lot of outcry online saying that this chapter was not very good at all, that it was really just a bunch of mid-plot lines strung together and together and together. But I actually really like what this chapter has to offer, and think that it's a pretty fun whenever you sit down and actually think about everything that this chapter brings up in the end of it, right? But before we get started talking about chapter itself, of course, there's a few things we do need to talk about. First off being that what happened last time on Oshi, and that was pretty much, there was a whole big deal of, okay, Kana and Ruby have not been getting along at all. Like, they have been mortal enemies for the past few days, and that is all because Kana's sudden outburst where she pretty much told Ruby that, hey, you're too good, I don't want to be around you anymore. And that was pretty much the whole point of it. And at the end of last chapter, it was just sort of a note of Kana and Ruby just leaving off on like, oh man, that's not too good. And also last chapter, there's a whole thing with Frill going on about her explaining, but it was just a weird end to chapter. Like, oh man, is Ai Hoshino, was she a simply frail girl too? And we really don't get any of that in the beginning of this chapter, as we sort of start off with Aqua and Director Gotanda sort of just sitting in a room, right? I mean, where else would they be sitting outside? I don't think either of them really get any sunlight at all. I mean, they're both shut-ins. I mean, Gotanda still lives with his parents, so I can't say anything. I do too, but hey, it is what it is. So Aqua pretty much asks, like, hey, Gotanda, do you think I was sad whenever her teammates abandoned her? And Gotanda looks back to Aqua and he just says, like, I mean, are you just talking about tomorrow's shoot? Because tomorrow we're filming the scene where Nino speaks harshly to Ai, correct? And Aqua's like, well, yeah, of course I'm talking about that. But also, Ruby asked me the other day, the question of, do you think Mama cried whenever she was having a hard time? And Gotanda just sort of looks at Aqua and he's just like, well, what do you think, Aqua? Because, of course, Aqua has more of a relationship with Ai than Gotanda had. I mean, father, daughter, and son. I mean, that's sort of their relationship. So Gotanda just looks and he's like, so what do you think about this, Aqua? And Aqua just says, isn't it obvious? I didn't cry. She was always carefree and she kept smiling, avoiding important conversations. Or at least I never personally saw her cry. Not even once. And he just continues saying, like, how do you interpret Ai's character, Director? And Gotanda just says, like, who knows? And Aqua just, like, looks at him again. He's just like, are you really giving me the answer here of who knows? But Gotanda just says, like, I'm neither a counselor nor a mentalist. How am I supposed to know? Which, to be honest, big props for Gotanda for just coming out and saying, like, how am I supposed to know how this fictional character thought about, like, the goddess of the idol world? Like, how am I supposed to put two and two together about how she felt, right? I write movies. I don't, number one, counsel people on what's right and wrong. If it did, I think the series would be a bit better because both Aqua and Ruby do need counseling and mental help, but we see Gotanda isn't available to provide either of those services at all, but he just continues saying that I just wrote a script by the living events that actually happened, but I put it together in a way that no matter how the actor interprets it or how it performs, it still won't fail. Which I find pretty funny. He's just saying, like, even if the actors just get this terribly wrong, like, this movie should be a success at the box office, or it better, because I may not have a job after this in that case. And he just continues saying, like, if I feel they're completely off, I can just stop them and reshoot. So Aqua just says, so you want me to think about it myself? And Gotanda just says that the point is that no one really knows. Ai is ultimately dead, and it's way too late to understand her feelings now. And he just continues saying that a long time ago, I filmed a documentary about becoming a Hachi, which I don't think if we actually knew that Gotanda had done this before, but Gotanda just says that I told him to please film the real me. And Gotanda says that now that I think about it, I think it was like a challenge. And he says just like, I warned her that I'd stop the filming it right away if she seemed to be keeping up appearances. And I did think that she was trying to bare her soul to me, but I never felt like I could capture the real her. So Gotanda just says that this movie is also kind of a revenge for me also. And he says, this time for sure, I want to film the real I. Which, this is a very interesting sentiment, because of course, okay, this is a movie about revenge for Aqua. Oh man, I wonder why that could be. Oh man, only because his father killed his mother inadvertently and he wants to get back at the father? That seems like a revenge plot to me. But Gotanda's idea of revenge here is just a little weird, sort of like, I couldn't film the real Ai Hoshino whenever she was alive, so this is revenge for me to film the real her through Ruby, right? Which is just a little weird, but Aqua's just like, okay, well, I hope you can do it, director, like, good for you if that's your goal. Hopefully you achieve it, right? But Gotanda just says, like, well, I'm making this movie with the premise that I'm going to get it done, and he says that's why he chose a Ruby for the role. Because he says that even if her acting is very weak, this movie will be terribly unbearable to watch. But if Ruby performs very well, this movie will soar to very high heights. And he says, for this very reason, I need Ruby to do her best, even if she has to force herself to some degree. And Aqua just says, to some degree, huh? Well, I think this goes without saying, but if you push her any more in this, you know it'll happen to you, right? And Gotanda just, of course, says the thing of, okay, Aqua, I understand. Your sister obsession really scares me. Like, you need to get this checked out by a medical professional, like, as soon as you can. Like, come on, Aqua, we can't be doing this around here, so. That sort of happens, but Gotanda says, but no matter that fact, she'll be fine. And Aqua's like, okay, well, how are you being able to say that? What grounds you stand on? And Gotanda says that she has Kana Amaria by her side. I think we need to tell Gotanda what's going on between the two of them right now. Of course, we get to that later in the chapter, but man, Gotanda, you're really not too educated on this subject, are you? And after Gotanda says this line that we definitely don't need to tell him, like, the problems with it, Aqua sort of just looks at him with, of course, his dark, menacing, I'm Aqua, I understand look. And Gotanda just continues saying that she used to be a selfish girl who acted in her own way. And he's like, of course, Aqua, you know that too. I mean, you've had firsthand experience with it. She spent most of her short life acting, and she lived in a world where acting is everything. And looked up, and she looked up to all of the actors around her as potential enemies. She did not have any colleagues or friends her age that she could share her feelings with. And her parents were, and I like how Gotanda just says, like, her parents were, like, sort of just, like, getting the point across of, yeah, Kana's parents sort of just wanted Kana to continue for the money purposes. I mean, thinking of, like, the two female actors that we've focus very prominently on the series. Like, I know Ruby's one of them, but I'm not getting into that. I'm just talking about like Kana and Akane, right? Both of their families sort of have like a very different situation to looking at this acting, right? It sort of seems like Akane's parents throughout the series has sort of been a whole lot more ready to help her, and of course, whenever the big deal happened in like Volume 3, and it was covered in the first part of the anime, there was that really big deal where it was just like, all right, so we have, what's her name here, Akane, like, her parents didn't know what was actually going on with her, but as soon as they did, they were ready to step down and help her. But Kana's parents are sort of like, oh, act for the money, we'll take the money, and we'll be your managers. That sounds like a deal to me, like, sounds good. But Gotanda just continues to saying, like, eventually asking Aqua, like, hey, do you know why I matched you against Kana? And Aqua's just like, so that I could chastise her whenever she got too full of herself? And Gotanda says that, yeah, of course, that was definitely one of the reasons, but there's a much simpler reason than that. I wanted you to be her friend. And that's just a very interesting sentiment that, of course, makes a lot of sense looking at it now and knowing sort of how tragic Kana's life has been, but also just seeing how that's come into the future, because of course we knew that from a young age, or at least young for Aqua, his sort of like whenever he was around Kana, he was a prodigy at the time, but not a prodigy like Kana was. He was a different sort of prodigy coming off the grounds of, hey, I knew how to act because I had a whole world ahead of me having to act for the real world. So that's just a very interesting plot point, I think, and just a very cool thing to see, and also, of course, knowing how in the current timeline, Aqua is very obsessed with Kana and everything, but that's besides the point. Gotanda continues, and I know I'm saying that a lot here, but he continues, just saying that Kana was a kid who was doing her best in a world filled with adults all by herself. She must have been more lonely than we could ever imagine, and he's like, on top of that, she had that kind of personality that I bet she didn't have any friends or anybody with similar values that she could share all of her interest with. And he just says, that is why when I saw her hanging out with all of the girls from becoming a Hachi, I felt so very relieved. And he just says, like, even though they were quarreling with each other, they were all acting like happy, normal kids their own age, right? Which, that's a very interesting sentiment, because, of course, yeah, Kana never really had that experience until she met all of the main cast. At this point, we get a very interesting panel as Gotanda just says that, I'm glad she made friends, as we just see a picture of like a young Ruby, a young Kana, and a young Mimcho all sitting next to each other, so it's very interesting, right? And Gotanda eventually makes note of, before I knew it, I was sounding like an old man, saying like, I'm glad she made friends and everything, which, I mean, that's, yeah, Gotanda, you definitely sound like an old man here. Like, you almost have, like, the whole plotting of Aqua here with, see, the whole reason I did that was because you two needed to be friends. Like, here's what we got. But as Aqua takes a look at Gotanda here from the background, Gotanda just says that no matter what happens, Kana Amaria will definitely protect Ruby Hoshino. She had always wanted a friend like that after all. As we cut to the Strawberry Productions headquarters, and then to the filming location that they're filming at that day, and we see Kana and Ruby walk into a room, right? I have to say, the outfits that these two are wearing are outfits for sure. I mean, that's the only reason I know how to describe them, but we sort of just see the two of them walk in, pay no attention to each other, and just walk past each other. And we see Mimcho is in the background just like looking at the two like, oh no, this isn't good. This isn't good at all. And we eventually see that, of course, Aqua is standing next to Gotanda, and he looks over to Gotanda and he's just like, are you sure the two of them are going to be fine? Because things are looking a little too grim for me. And Gotanda's just like, no, this is what adolescence is like, right? Things happen like this with girls around their age all the time, right? And Aqua, of course, being a dude, like both of them are just dudes, and they're just like, I have no idea. But Gotonda's just really freaking out here, and he's just like, I mean, they say that, like, fights deepen your friendships and everything, right? And I do have to say, Aqua has a great point here, just saying, like, no, Gotonda, that only happens in fiction, which I'll give it to you, Aqua. You won me over with that joke right there. If I wasn't already an Aqua fan, that was a pretty good one, right? But Aqua just continues saying, like, in real life, you'll wind up keeping your distance, and it's all over. And Gotonda just looks at Aqua, and he's just like, hey, Aqua, please, you gotta help them smooth things over, right? And Aqua's just like, why me? Why do I gotta do anything? And Gotonda's just like, hey, man, Ruby is your sister, and you're getting along well with Kana, right? He's like, aren't you worried about the two of them? And Aqua just goes sits down in a chair next to Gotonda, and he just says, like, alright, don't get too flustered. You're the person in charge here, so stay calm, right? And Gotonda just looks at him just like, oh no, Aqua, you can't be doing this to me. Come on, man. No, what am I going to do about this? Like, I already left the cookies in the oven too long this morning. I forgot to turn off the light in my room. Like, I'll never get home. My mom's going to be upset at me. Like, oh no, what am I supposed to do just because of these two here? Like, oh no, this is bad. But Aqua just continues just saying, like, hey, don't worry, Ruby won't break easily, and even if she fails, she'll turn everything around her into her benefit. And the same goes for Arima. She's definitely not a child anymore. She's grown up to be an actor who can see the bigger picture. Just trust the two of them. They're already quite splendid, if you ask me. As these final two panels that we see are both Ruby and Kana getting in their costumes for the movie, and then the two of them dressed up as Ai and then dressed up as Nino, standing next to each other while the lights and cameras are pointing towards them, as Aqua says this whole sentiment of, just trust them, Gotonda. And yeah, that is the chapter this week. Like I said, a lot of people didn't really like this because they saw a lot of this as a recap chapter with the whole Gotonda thing, but I really do like this chapter because Aqua says here in these last few pages, he says that, hey, Ruby won't break easily, and even if she fails, she'll turn everything around into her benefit. Of course he knows that, because of course he knows the whole Serena connection and everything else along with that, so it's a very nice sentiment there. And also saying that Kana is an adult, and she can see the bigger picture, right? She knows what this is, and of course, as we know how Kana has looked at this in the past, has looked and just like said, hey, this is the bigger picture, this is what is going on here. And the whole note of just like, hey, just trust them, they're already quite splendid. It's just really great. I also just love Gotonda's characterization in this chapter, how he just comes through as just like, hey, the reason that I initially wanted Aqua to face off against Kana is so you two would become friends, because I know how hard it is for Kana, and to have a friend like that would have just really helped her out at the time. So just seeing that's a really cool thing in general. And then Gotonda's freak out at the end. I mean, it is just an A-class of just like, come on, man. And something I didn't point out at the time, but like whenever he's like, hey, man, Ruby's your sister, right? Come on, help her out. And Aqua with his whole sister complex isn't like, no, man, I'm not going to deal with that part. Like, if you start to threaten Ruby, yeah. Like, overwork her, yeah. But not make her help friends. Like, she can do that on her own, right? So, that's pretty funny. But with Oshi no Oko, of course, we have the next chapter coming out in no more this year in December, right? It is coming out on January 3rd of 2024. So, yeah, this is the last Oshi no Ko chapter of December. And I do find this a little bit funny because, Asaka's and Mingo York went on break for a week and then had a chapter this week, and they're going on a break for another 2 weeks before giving us another chapter. But whatever, it's fine. I'm just happy we're getting some more Oshi no Ko. So yeah, this is just a really awesome chapter in general, and I don't really have too much else to say on it. But with that, it's finally come time for the self-promotion part of this whole deal. Of course, we've got a lot of our Oshinoko videos on the channel, so if you ended up liking this one, and you're like, man, I would like to check out some of the other things this guy has, I've got them all on the channel in a playlist, link down below in the description, go check them out there. And if you did like this, maybe you want to consider hitting the subscribe button, or liking the video, or commenting your thoughts on this chapter down below. Each and every one of those things just helps me out so much in general, and yeah, I mean, it's just an awesome thing for you to do. Also, I have a Discord and a Twitter community linked down in the description down below if you want to come check out those communities and just talk with some Oshinoko with us whenever chapters released, or by us, I mean just me, being that we don't really have a community yet, but I want to grow one because that's just an awesome thing that I would love to do, and see people like what you guys think about Oshinoko, because that's just an awesome thing to figure out. And with that, I don't have too much else to say. This was a great chapter of Oshinoko, again, number 135, titled By Her Side, which I never actually talked about what that meant, but like the whole by her side is, oh yeah, Kana will always be by Ruby's side, and Ruby will always be by Kana's side, but oh no, that's actually not how it is, but still a very good chapter title. And with that, I don't have too much else to say. Again, thank you guys all for watching this video, and I'll see you guys next time for Oshinoko chapter number 136. But yeah, it's been 135, and this will be Glowplsama231